Canada just made a move that could change the global aluminum market forever. Instead of sending its valuable metal to the United States, it quietly turned toward Europe, where buyers were ready to pay more. Canada gained a huge advantage, while American factories were left facing a problem they never expected. In 2026, as the Iran conflict drove global aluminum prices to record levels, Canada made a documented commercial pivot. Rather than channeling its aluminum output southward into the American market that had been its dominant destination for decades, Canadian producers turned toward Europe, redirecting shipments across the Atlantic at a moment when both global prices and European demand for low-carbon aluminum were simultaneously at their strongest point in years. The U.S. Midwest premium for aluminum had already broken above $2,182 per metric ton, more than double the previous record set during the 2022 supply chain crisis. And a share of the Canadian aluminum that American manufacturers expected was heading to European buyers instead. Canada is the world's fourth largest primary aluminum producer, behind China, India, and Russia, according to Natural Resources Canada. Quebec is home to 9 of Canada's 10 primary aluminum smelters, with a 10th operating in Kitimat, British Columbia. The Quebec smelting industry draws almost entirely on hydroelectric power, a generation source that gives Canadian aluminum a carbon footprint approximately 1/6 of the global industry average, and half the emissions of conventional smelting technology using fossil fuel-powered electricity. That carbon profile is the commercial differentiator that European buyers operating under the EU Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism are willing to pay a premium to access. Canadian aluminum is not simply aluminum. It is low-carbon certified aluminum produced at scale in a politically stable jurisdiction, a combination that the global market cannot replicate outside Canada and a handful of Scandinavian producers. By 2024, Canada was exporting roughly 13.4 billion Canadian dollars worth of aluminum annually, with more than 94% of that total flowing to the United States. That near total dependence on a single buyer gave American manufacturers reliable access to Canadian supply at prices governed by the bilateral commercial relationship rather than by global competition. When the Trump administration imposed 25% Section 232 tariffs on Canadian aluminum in March 2025, escalating to 50% in June 2025, the commercial logic of maintaining that near-exclusive U.S. orientation reversed. European buyers offering Brent-adjacent LME pricing without a 50% tariff wedge became commercially attractive to Canadian producers in a way they had never been during the period of frictionless cross-border aluminum trade. The Iran conflict's effect on global aluminum markets amplified that European opportunity significantly. The Strait of Hormuz disruption in 2026 reduced available aluminum supply from Middle Eastern producers, the UAE, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar collectively contribute meaningful volumes to global aluminum trade while simultaneously driving energy price increases that raise smelting costs for producers using fossil fuel-powered electricity. Canadian aluminum, powered by hydroelectric generation entirely insulated from natural gas price volatility, became more competitively priced relative to those Middle Eastern alternatives precisely when Middle Eastern supply was constrained and European demand for reliable replacement supply was highest. The timing produced a clear commercial signal. May 2026 was the moment to redirect Canadian supply toward European buyers. The retaliatory countermeasures Canada applied to American steel and aluminum following the Section 232 escalation established the policy architecture under which the commercial redirection has proceeded. Canada applied 25% retaliatory tariffs on selected American steel and aluminum products, covering $12.6 billion in steel and $3 billion in aluminum, effective March 13, 2025. On December 26, 2025, Canada implemented a 25% global tariff on steel derivative imports from all countries and reduced the tariff-free quota for steel imports from countries without free trade agreements with Canada from 50% to 20% of 2024 levels. Those countermeasures generated revenue that funded the retaliatory stance while preserving the commercial case for Canadian producers to seek higher-priced European buyers rather than continuing to discount product into a tariff-complicated American market. Rio Tinto's AP60 smelter expansion at Complexe Arvida in Saguenay, Quebec, commissioned in May 2026 at a cost of $1.5 billion US, added approximately 160,000 metric tons of annual primary aluminum production capacity, bringing the facility's total AP60 output to 220,000 metric tons per year once fully ramped. The AP60 technology produces aluminum at 1/6 of industry average greenhouse gas emissions per ton when powered by Quebec's hydroelectric grid, and delivers a 90% reduction in fine particulate matter compared to older Arvida smelting technology. This is the first major primary aluminum project commissioned in the Western world in more than a decade. It entered service at the precise moment European demand for certified low-carbon aluminum was strongest, and the commercial case for directing Canadian output toward European buyers rather than American ones had never been clearer. The Saskatchewan alumina story adds a longer-term dimension to Canada's aluminum strategic position that is only beginning to attract attention. Natural Resources Canada has been tracking the Project Thor discovery near Tisdale, Saskatchewan, a deposit described as potentially containing billions of tons of alumina-rich material sitting in black shale formations relatively close to the surface. Alumina is the intermediate product aluminum oxide, from which primary aluminum is produced through electrolysis. Canada has historically imported virtually all of its alumina from bauxite processing operations in Australia, Jamaica, and Brazil. If Project Thor proves economically viable at the scale early estimates suggest, Canada would gain domestic control over the alumina input that its Quebec smelters currently source. Externally, a structural transformation in the aluminum value chain, whose significance would extend far beyond the bilateral trade dispute with the United States. The American response to the commercial redirection of Canadian aluminum toward Europe has followed the predictable trajectory of a market that cannot quickly replace the supply it has come to depend on. American manufacturers, automotive, aerospace, construction, defense are paying the $2,182 Midwest premium, plus the base LME price for aluminum, for an all-in cost exceeding $5,340 per metric ton. That all-in price is nearly 70% higher than what international competitors sourcing metal from the London Metal Exchange pay. American-made aluminum-intensive goods vehicles, aircraft components, beverage cans now carry higher production costs than equivalent goods manufactured by European or Asian competitors buying aluminum at LME rather than LME plus Midwest premium. The tariff that was designed to protect American aluminum producers has instead created a cost disadvantage for every American manufacturer that uses aluminum as an input. Rio Tinto has been adding scarcity surcharges of 1 to 3 cents per pound on top of the already record high Midwest premium in the American market, reflecting the tightness of available US aluminum inventory. A primary aluminum producer adding scarcity premiums to a record regional premium indicates that supply at any price is running short, that the combination of reduced Canadian import volumes under the 50% tariff and flat or declining domestic American smelter output has produced a genuine structural supply shortfall. European manufacturers buying aluminum at LME pricing without the Midwest premium cost disadvantage are in a more competitive production cost position for every aluminum-intensive product they sell into global markets. That competitive advantage will persist for as long as Canadian producers find European buyers willing to pay LME-linked prices more attractive than American buyers paying LME plus Midwest premium after absorbing the 50% section. 232 tariff. The strategy Canada has executed redirecting low-carbon aluminum toward European buyers in response to American tariff pressure is producing the commercial outcomes the tariff architects did not model. Canadian producers are earning more per ton. European manufacturers are getting the supply. American manufacturers are paying the highest aluminum prices in history.